You're lying to me." The detective doesn't flinch. "No, I'm not." Then the mom says the line that makes the room feel smaller. "You seriously think my family did it?" And the detective hits her with the one detail nobody can talk their way around. Your mom's car is on video, leaving the homicide. Because once a car shows up on camera, this stops being a rumor. It stops being he said, she said. It becomes a timeline, a route, a piece of the truth that doesn't care how emotional anyone gets. And the worst part? The dead teen's girlfriend is pregnant, and she's sitting right there, swearing her mother would never. She has no idea that police are quietly wondering something way darker. What if the person comforting her is the reason her baby will never meet his dad? But that wasn't the whole story. Because before detectives ever reached that question, the day started with a single shot in a place nobody was even looking. It's a quiet Friday morning in downtown Albuquerque. A 16-year-old walks alone through a back alley, heading to work like it's any other day. He's not running. He's not looking over his shoulder. He's just moving forward because he doesn't know what's waiting for him. Then, one gunshot, not a burst, not chaos, just one clean sound that changes everything. Within minutes, 911 calls flood in. Patrol cars swing into the area, tires crunching over gravel and broken glass as officers turn into the alley. And there he is, a teenage boy on the pavement, motionless, blood pooling near his head. No weapon, no wallet, no quick explanation. The kind of scene that tells you the shooter didn't hesitate. They did what they came to do and disappeared. Officers locked down the perimeter. Now it's a homicide scene. And the only real question is the one that always matters first. Who is he? And why was he here? But the answer to that starts with something detectives notice on his body. Something so small, it almost feels insulting next to the horror. An apron. And that apron is about to pull this whole case across the street. The apron isn't random. It's the kind restaurant workers wear when they're scrubbing dishes in the back, out of sight. Detectives look around and realize there's one obvious place it could have come from. Lindy's Diner. They walk in, and the owners don't need time to think. They recognize him immediately. His name is Jose Ruiz, 16 years old, a dishwasher, new job, new routine, a kid who should have been worried about tips and homework, not dying in an alley. Police call his grandfather. The man arrives and tries to hold himself together as detectives break the news. And while he's clearly shattered, he tells them something that sticks. Jose had been involved in something lately, and he wouldn't tell the full truth about it. That's the first hint this wasn't random. Then the grandfather adds another detail that makes the entire case heavier. Jose wasn't just a teenager with secrets. He was about to become a father. His girlfriend is pregnant. And she's at the grandfather's apartment right now. Detectives glance at each other because they already know what comes next. If anyone can explain what Jose was mixed up in, it's her. But when they walk into that apartment, they don't just find a grieving girlfriend. They find the start of a family storm. Inside Lindy's, the air smells like fried oil and coffee that's been sitting too long. The staff aren't thinking about crime scenes. They're thinking about tickets, dishes, and the rush that hits without warning. That's why the recognition is instant. A dishwasher isn't just a kid in the back here. He's the person who keeps the place from collapsing. Detectives start with routine questions. When did Jose clock in? Who saw him last? Did he mention a ride? A meeting? A problem? Someone remembers him joking about becoming a dad, then hurrying out like he didn't want to be late. Bruciaga notes the tiny details that build a timeline. The apron string, the wet floor sign, the way the staff say he was reliable. They pull schedules, time cards, and any camera angles that might show him leaving. Every minute matters because the moment he stepped into that alley, the clock started counting down. And when the diner owner says his grandpa's close by, detectives know the next conversation won't be about shifts or sinks. It'll be about who Jose was afraid to name. Because the people who kill like this don't pick strangers. They pick targets, and someone knew his routine. Elizabeth is 17, pregnant, still processing what great-grandpa even means. Detectives sit with her and keep it gentle at first because she's young and she's shaking, and she still thinks there's a chance this is some mistake. Elizabeth tells them Jose got ready for work that morning. He was texting her, normal stuff, until he suddenly stopped responding around the time detectives believed the shot happened. To detectives, that's a clean timeline. But clean timelines in messy cases usually hide dirty details. They ask the standard questions. Was he in trouble? Was he beefing with anyone? Did he mention threats? Elizabeth says Jose didn't tell her much. He kept things close. And for a second, it feels like the case is heading toward the usual explanation. Wrong people, wrong choices, wrong day. Then Elizabeth casually drops one sentence that changes the temperature in the room. This morning, him and my brother were supposed to box it out. Box it out. A planned fight. And now detectives aren't thinking random. They're thinking setup. Because once a fight is planned, it means someone was supposed to show up somewhere. And when someone shows up, a killer can be waiting. But who planned it? Elizabeth's next words point the spotlight straight into her own home. Elizabeth's answers come in bursts, like she's trying to outrun her own thoughts. She keeps checking her phone, not because a message is coming, but because staring at the screen is easier than staring at grief. Bruciaga watches the little pauses. The way Elizabeth says, "I don't know," fast, then adds extra words, then stops again. Detectives ask about the last call, the last text, the last time Jose sounded nervous. They ask if he ever mentioned being followed, being jumped, being threatened. Elizabeth insists he kept things quiet, but even that is information. Quiet people usually have a reason to stay quiet. When Bruciaga repeats a question, Elizabeth's tone shifts from sadness to defense, like she's protecting someone without realizing it. They note the family names she mentions and the ones she avoids. They ask where Angela was that morning, what her mom said, who knew about the boxing idea. Elizabeth tries to frame it as harmless, but the detective keeps the pace tight. Harmless plans don't end in an alley execution, and right when Elizabeth thinks the interview is winding down, she reveals the detail that drags everything back to her front door. The story is about to shift. Elizabeth explains the tension. Her younger brother Angelo didn't like the way Jose spoke to her. They'd fought before. The energy between them wasn't two guys who ignore each other. It was active, personal. The kind of thing that fills a house with arguments and slammed doors. Elizabeth says Jose called her and told her mom he wanted to box Angelo. That detail matters, because it means the mother isn't just hearing about this through gossip. She's directly involved in the communication. Elizabeth tries to distance it. My brother would never do this. But detectives aren't hearing what she believes. They're hearing what she just admitted. A fight was planned that morning. So while Elizabeth cries and Jose's family arrives, Detective Anna Bruciaga has a different mission now. She needs hard evidence, witnesses, cameras. Anything that shows what happened after the shot, because whoever did this didn't vanish into thin air. They left somehow. And as detectives canvass the area, they find the first thing that can't be argued with: video. In families, a pregnancy doesn't just change two teenagers, it changes the power dynamics in the house. Suddenly, everyone has opinions, everyone has fears, and every argument feels like it's about the future. Elizabeth describes Angelo as protective, but Bruciaga hears something sharper. Protective can turn into possessive when pride gets involved. The detective asks how often Angelo and Jose clashed, what the fights were really about, and whether anyone ever stepped in to handle it. Elizabeth keeps circling the same point. Angelo wouldn't go that far, yet she also admits the tension was constant. That contradiction is exactly what detectives hunt for. Because if the family truly believed Jose hurt Elizabeth, then the motive isn't complicated. It's emotional, immediate, and explosive. And emotional motives are dangerous because they make people feel justified. Bruciaga also notes the phrasing, "box it out," sounds organized. Like someone wanted rules, a location, a time. Rules don't appear out of nowhere. Somebody suggested them, somebody approved them, somebody made sure the message landed, and as soon as the word "mom" enters the chain, the case stops being teen drama and starts looking like adult permission. That's when detectives begin treating every family member as a potential organizer. Nearby, officers locate a school camera aimed toward the alley. The footage isn't pretty. It's grainy, weird angles, classic security cam quality. But the moment the gunshot happens, everything on screen reacts. And then detectives see it, a gold Toyota sedan racing away seconds after the shot. Tinted windows, 2 figures inside at least. That's huge because it means this wasn't one person on foot. This wasn't a panic and run situation. This was a getaway, a plan. And if the car is real, then somebody in this story already has the missing puzzle piece. So detectives go back to the apartment to lock down the family's information. They need names, cars, phones, anything that ties a person to that footage. And that's when Elizabeth's mother walks in, trying to comfort her daughter, a mother doing mother things. Except she says something she shouldn't have said. Video work is tedious, but it's also ruthless. Detectives rewind the same seconds until the clip feels burned into their eyes. They mark the exact moment the car appears, the speed, the angle of the turn, the direction it heads. They zoom in on the windshield, hoping for a face, a sticker, anything. Tinted windows erase identities, but they don't erase movement. Bruciaga knows that if she can string together 2 more cameras, one at the corner, one at a nearby lot, the car becomes trackable. So officers canvass businesses and schools, asking for footage before it overwrites. Every sorry it deletes after 24 hours feels like losing oxygen. When they finally see the Toyota again on another angle, it confirms the getaway wasn't panic, it was purposeful. The driver doesn't hesitate or circle. They leave like they already know the route. That detail narrows the suspect pool to people familiar with the area, people comfortable driving central, people who didn't need GPS. And once Bruciaga hears a family member casually mention a gold Toyota, she realizes the video might have just named itself. From that moment on, every conversation becomes a test. Who reacts, who deflects, and who goes silent first. And who Chavez sits down with Detective Bruciaga. It starts casual. Basic questions, normal tone. The detective's watching her eyes, her hands, her breathing. Moms in shock don't act the same. People lie differently when they're scared. Then Bruciaga asks a simple question. What kind of car do you drive? Chavez answers, a Toyota. Gold? And suddenly that simple question becomes a loaded weapon, because the one clear thing detectives have from the scene is a gold Toyota. Chavez explains it away fast. She says the car broke down earlier and she left it on the side of the road. No plates yet, temporary tag stuff, she just bought it. To a normal person, that sounds like bad luck. To a homicide detective staring at a getaway car on video, it sounds like the beginning of a cover story. Bruciaga doesn't accuse her right there. She just logs it, keeps her voice calm, and leaves with officers to check the spot where Chavez claims the car was abandoned. Because if the car is sitting there, Chavez is probably just unlucky. But if it's not, then somebody moved it. And somebody moved it for a reason. They arrive, and the car is gone. Now, Bruciaga isn't chasing a maybe. She's chasing a person who's already altering the story. So she returns to the apartment. And this time she doesn't speak softly. Bruciaga keeps her voice neutral on purpose because neutrality makes liars talk longer. She asks about the purchase date, the paperwork, the temporary tag, the exact place the car broke down. Chavez answers quickly, but quick answers can be rehearsed. The detective watches for the micro delays, the half second where someone decides which version of the story to pick. When Chavez says Toyota and gold, Bruciaga doesn't react, even though her mind is racing. She knows reactions educate suspects, so she switches to lifestyle questions. Who drives it most? Who has keys? Who could move it without asking? Chavez frames herself as responsible, as the adult who keeps track of everyone, which is supposed to sound reassuring, but it also creates a new problem. A controlling adult usually knows where her kids are. So if Chavez later claims she has no idea how the car ended up on camera, the control narrative collapses. Bruciaga logs every detail in real time because later, when stories change, the first version is the one that matters. And by the time Chavez finishes talking, the detective already knows she'll be checking one thing next, the car's location. If it's missing, someone moved it today deliberately. It hasn't even been a full day since Jose died, and Detective Bruciaga is already taking a swing most detectives wait weeks to take. She sits Chavez down and goes straight for the throat. I believe your car was used in today's homicide. Chavez snaps back immediately. You're lying to me. Bruciaga doesn't blink. No, I am not. Chavez insists the car was abandoned and must have been stolen. She acts offended, like the detective is insulting her. But Bruciaga doesn't care about offended. She cares about probability. Because what are the odds that Jose is dead, a gold Toyota is on camera leaving seconds after, and Elizabeth's mom just happens to drive a gold Toyota that vanished? The detective pushes harder, and then she asks the question that makes the room feel like a trap closing. Did you shoot? Chavez says no. Then she says something that's supposed to end the suspicion. He's a kid. He's a baby. She's talking about Angelo, and that's exactly why Bruciaga's next move is obvious. If this car is tied to the murder, the person most likely behind the wheel is someone who had motive anger, and access. A teenage son. So detectives go to Angelo, and for a moment it almost sounds like the family story is airtight until the mom walks in and shuts everything down. Accusing someone that early is a gamble, but Bruciaga is playing the odds. If Chavez is innocent, she'll lean into facts. Where the car is, who can verify her timeline, what receipts exist. If she's involved, she'll lean into emotion, outrage, disbelief, offense. Chavez chooses offense. She talks like the detective is attacking her family name, not investigating a dead teenager. Bruciaga stays calm and keeps the pressure on the one thing Chavez can't debate. Video doesn't care about feelings. She asks again about the breakdown story, about who could have picked the car up, about whether Chavez filed the stolen report immediately. Every time Chavez answers, Bruciaga notes what she doesn't say. There's no frantic, help me find it. No urgent, let's call everyone. Just a tight insistence that police are wrong. Then comes the question about the shooting. Chavez denies, but her denial doesn't end the conversation. It widens it. Because now Bruciaga has to consider two possibilities. Chavez is protecting the shooter, or Chavez is the shooter. Either way, the next logical step is the same. Separate the son from the mother and see who can keep the story straight. That separation is where family secrets usually fall apart. Detectives meet Angelo and lay it out bluntly. Jose is dead. Angelo confirms there was tension, confirms Jose wanted to fight, but he keeps it simple, keeps it neat, says nothing happened. No meetup, no plan. It's the kind of answer that sounds clean enough to believe, until you remember what happens in families when something goes wrong. They agree on a version. They repeat it until it feels real. And just as detectives start trying to press him, Chavez storms into the situation, suddenly loud, suddenly controlling, acting like she's there to protect her son from being targeted. Even if she's innocent, it looks bad. Because innocent people don't usually shut down a homicide interview like that unless they're terrified of what will be said. Detectives seize the phones. They don't have confessions. But they can hunt for contradictions. And contradictions are the fastest way to break a family script. Because if the truth is ugly, it always leaks somewhere first. In texts, in calls, in messages people think they can delete, and when detectives start digging into those phones, the case stops being about a boxing match. It starts looking like a setup with adults in the middle. But the most dangerous part of this story is what happens next, when investigators think they've got the killer, only to learn they were staring at the wrong person the entire time. Angelo's calm is what bothers them. Teenagers who just learned someone died usually spill emotion, anger, fear, shock. Angelo gives tight sentences like he's reciting. Bruciaga asks the same question 3 different ways and watches for drift. But his story stays stiff, almost frozen. That can mean innocence, but it can also mean rehearsal. Then Chavez enters and the temperature spikes. She doesn't ask what happened. She questions the detectives. She positions herself between Angelo and the interview, like a gate that decides what information gets out. To police, that's control, and control usually comes from knowing what's at risk. After Chavez pushes to end the conversation, detectives shift to what they can legally preserve. Devices, accounts, timestamps. They explain the seizure plainly because later the defense will challenge every step. Chain of custody matters as much as motive. A clean extraction can show deleted messages, location history, and who contacted who right before the shooting. And once the phones are in evidence bags, the family loses the one advantage they've relied on: rewriting the story in private. From here, detectives don't need confessions. They need patterns. And patterns live in timestamps, contacts, and the gaps between them always there. Detectives don't need anyone to remember the truth when the phones are still warm. Because while the family is telling police the fight wasn't serious, the digital trail is whispering something else. This wasn't random, and it wasn't spontaneous. As they dig through messages, investigators start seeing signs that the boxing match wasn't just a teenage idea. It was being coordinated, timed, and discussed like an actual meetup. And the detail that keeps jumping out is the one that makes detectives' stomachs drop. Chavez wasn't just aware of it. She was involved in arranging it, at least in the way a parent becomes involved when kids are handling business. Then the contradictions begin stacking like bricks. Elizabeth told detectives Jose didn't leave until later, but Jose's messages suggest he was expecting them much earlier. He's texting about how they didn't show and blaming the family. That matters because it destroys the innocent narrative. If Jose was waiting for them, then the meeting existed. And if the meeting existed, someone knew where he'd be. But the most unsettling part is the new name that creeps into the case: Elizabeth's older brother, Gilbert. Because in his messages, he's not sounding like a guy who wants peace. He's sounding like someone who wants payback. And now detectives are staring at a frightening possibility. This might not be one angry kid. This might be a family problem. Except the family has one advantage over police. They can refuse to talk. And for a while, that's exactly what happens. Back at the lab, the phone extractions become a second interrogation. Only this witness can't get nervous. Investigators pull call logs, app data, and location pings, then compare them against the known timeline from the alley. They look for coordination. Multiple messages hitting within minutes, sudden silence, or conversations that jump to a new platform. They also look for cleanup, deleted threads, cleared histories, phones that mysteriously reset after a homicide. Each of those moves screams awareness. When the word boxing shows up across different chats, it stops sounding like a joke and starts sounding like an appointment. Detectives map who knew about it, who repeated it, and who tried to downplay it. Then they isolate the adult fingerprints. Chavez's involvement in the communication, her knowledge of the meeting, her attempt to control access to statements. That's when the theory evolves from teen fight went bad to family planned a confrontation. And once a family is a unit in a case, detectives treat them like one organism. If one part lies, another part usually leaks. The pressure point becomes Elizabeth, because time is about to remove her mother's ability to keep her off the record. All they need is a crack. For days, detectives hit the same wall. The kids are minors, and Chavez keeps them guarded. No interviews, no clarifications, no mistakes, just silence. Then the clock changes everything. Elizabeth turns 18. And suddenly her mother can't block detectives from talking to her anymore. So Detective Bruciaga brings Elizabeth in again. But this time the tone is different. No gentle questions. No soft entry. She goes straight for the throat. You've had time to think. Now tell me what really happened. Elizabeth immediately denies it. She looks insulted that police would even suggest she knows more than she said the first time. And when Bruciaga starts laying out what she's found, breakup texts, tension, family conflict, Elizabeth snaps, "You're saying I had someone do something to him? Are you serious?" Bruciaga doesn't back off. She starts connecting dots out loud. The fight, the car, the missing vehicle, the contradictions. Then she drops the line that makes Elizabeth's face change. "So why are you covering for your mom and your brother?" Elizabeth explodes. She says her mom loved Jose, too. She says there are tons of gold Toyotas in the city. She says her brother was home sleeping. And when she's overwhelmed, she stands up like she's done. That's when the detective flips tactics. Instead of arguing, she leans into the emotional pressure. She reminds Elizabeth her baby will grow up without a dad. And if the family did it, then the family took that future away. Elizabeth breaks down, but still doesn't confess. Because if she admits what she knows, she isn't just betraying a suspect. She's betraying her own blood, and that's the trap this case is built on. But the biggest twist? Detectives still don't fully realize who the real threat is. Because while they're staring at Elizabeth, and Angelo, and Gilbert, the person they should be watching is the one who keeps controlling the room. And soon, detectives decide they're done waiting. When Elizabeth is legally an adult, the interview becomes sharper in two ways. Her rights are clearer, and her responsibility is heavier. Bruciaga makes it plain that this isn't about embarrassing a family. It's about explaining a dead teen and a baby who will grow up with questions. Elizabeth's denials come fast, but the detective isn't chasing emotion. She's chasing inconsistencies. She revisits the earlier statements, then slides in new details from the digital trail to see if Elizabeth reacts. A pause, a swallow, a sudden change in wording. Those tiny shifts can reveal when someone hits the edge of what they were told to say. When Bruciaga asks why Elizabeth keeps defending her mom, Elizabeth frames it as love, not secrecy. But love can be the strongest form of pressure, especially when a parent has been the center of the household. The detective also anchors the conversation in the future. Your child will ask who his father was, what happened, and why no one spoke. That lands because it's true. And truth has weight even when a person refuses to confess. Elizabeth's tears don't solve the case, but they confirm something important. This family is holding back and everyone knows it. Time passes, and investigators keep collecting ugly little details. They notice Chavez never properly followed through with the stolen vehicle report the way she claimed. They find more signs Gilbert's anger wasn't just talk, messages that read like threats, like someone fantasizing about violence, then panicking about being linked to it. And it creates a working theory in detectives' heads. Maybe Gilbert was the muscle. Maybe Angelo was the one who showed up. Maybe Chavez helped clean it up. It's a compelling theory. It's also dangerous, because compelling isn't proof. So Bruciaga makes a choice that can either crack the case or blow it up. She goes back to the house, not with warrants, with pressure. And when she meets Gilbert at the door, she doesn't waste time. I'm not going to play games with you. I know you threatened him. Gilbert denies, gets mouthy, acts like he's untouchable. Then Bruciaga does something smart. She takes his phone. Because people can lie all day. Phones don't lie as easily, and while all that is happening, Chavez steps outside, acting rushed, saying she needs to catch a bus. Bruciaga intercepts her, and this time Chavez isn't calm. She's irritated, defensive, like someone tired of holding a story together. And then she slips. The doorstep visit is tactical. Detectives choose it because home is where people slip, where bravado fades and comfort makes them careless. Gilbert answers like he's ready for a fight, not a conversation. He keeps his body squared up, voice loud, eyes daring the detective to prove it. But Bruciaga doesn't need a shouting match. She needs access. When she takes the phone, she's taking the one place rage tends to show up honestly, in late-night messages and impulsive posts. Gilbert acts insulted, yet the insult is useful because anger makes people talk. Meanwhile, Chavez tries to shrink the encounter by claiming a schedule, a bus, an errand, anything that pulls her out of the spotlight. Bruciaga refuses the escape route. She keeps the questions tight because every extra second on that porch is a chance for the family to coordinate inside. That's why she separates conversations, one person at a time, and repeats the same basic points. You knew about the meeting, you knew about the fight, and someone died. The goal isn't a confession today. It's a mistake. And you can feel the mistake coming because Chavez is starting to explain instead of deny. Explaining is how defenses collapse fast. Chavez sits across from Bruciaga again. This time she's not there as a grieving mom. She's there in cuffs. Bruciaga tries a different approach, calm, controlled, almost respectful, like she's offering Chavez a chance to explain herself. She asks how Angelo is doing. Chavez responds like a mother, still clinging to the old script. He's there for nothing. Bruciaga reads her rights, and the moment Chavez realizes this isn't a conversation, it's a collapse. She asks for a lawyer. Interview over. And now the story leaves the interrogation room and moves to court, where prosecutors lay out their version. A family disapproved of Jose. A planned fight created a perfect meeting point. A car on video ties the escape to the home, and the mother allegedly gambled that if her son took the blame, the consequences would be lighter. And in the end, the case doesn't close with a dramatic confession. It closes with consequences. By the time Chavez sits in the chair again, the tone has changed completely. This isn't a mother being asked to help. It's a suspect being asked to explain. Bruciaga keeps it controlled because the goal is not a shouting match. It's a record. She offers Chavez the opening that defendants often need. Tell your version before the state tells theirs. Chavez tries to keep the old script alive, framing Angelo as innocent and herself as misunderstood. But Bruciaga has learned not to chase the script. She anchors every question to a piece of evidence. The car, the timeline, the communications, the reports. Each anchor removes one escape route. When Chavez asks about Angelo, it reads like concern. But it also reads like control, checking what the kid might say. Bruciaga reads the rights because once those rights are on the table, the interview becomes a fork, talk or lawyer up. Chavez chooses the lawyer, which is her right, and the room goes quiet. That quiet matters, because it means the state will build the story without her voice. From here, the battlefield shifts to court, where motive gets argued, timelines get projected, and the family's private choices get dissected in public. In jail calls, people try to code their language. They try to sound normal. They try to pretend the walls aren't listening. But emotions slip. And according to what investigators later focused on in this story, one call contains a moment that hits different. Chavez says something that sounds like regret, like responsibility, like she knows she messed up. It's not a courtroom confession, but it's enough to push detectives toward their real play. Flip Angelo. Because if Angelo has been holding the line for his mother, the only way out is to make him see one brutal truth. He's the one paying for it. So when Bruciaga approaches him again, Angelo doesn't act like a kid who's innocent. He acts like a kid negotiating survival. He asks about getting the charge reduced. He asks about deals. He asks what happens if he talks, this time with an attorney present. And according to the narrative in the transcript you provided, Angelo ends up corroborating that his mother was the one who pulled the trigger. Again, this is heavy, and it has to be said carefully. We're describing what's presented in this account of the case, not claiming private knowledge beyond it. But from the investigator's viewpoint, this is the moment the family wall starts collapsing. Now they have what they didn't have before, a direct statement pointing to Chavez. And that means the next move is inevitable. A warrant, an arrest, and one final interrogation where detectives try to get the words they need, only for Chavez to do the one thing guilty people do when they realize the trap is closing. She shuts it down. Jail calls have a rhythm. At first it's logistics, court dates, commissary, who's picking up what. Then it turns emotional, because fear makes people reach for the closest voice they trust. Detectives listen for slips, not speeches. A pronoun in the wrong place, a sudden we instead of he. A pause when a name is mentioned. Even the way someone says, "Don't talk about that," can reveal what that is. When Chavez sounds regretful, investigators don't assume guilt. They flag the moment and stack it next to other evidence. Corroboration is the rule. Then they watch Angelo's behavior shift. A kid who was silent starts asking questions about deals, about reducing charges, about what happens if he cooperates. That doesn't automatically mean truth, but it does mean the loyalty is cracking. In cases involving family, loyalty is the strongest cage because it feels like love. Bruciaga leans on reality instead. Years, consequences, and the fact that adults are supposed to protect kids, not hide behind them. When Angelo finally talks with counsel present, detectives focus on specifics they can verify. If those specifics align, the case stops being a theory and becomes a chargeable path toward Chavez. Now they move fast. Months go by. Elizabeth gives birth. She posts like she's trying to rebuild a life around the wreckage. Angelo stays locked up. And everyone outside the case assumes the story is over. Then in March 2023, police get a call from a woman who says she's been messaging Gilbert on Facebook. Now, to be clear, a message isn't a conviction. People lie online. People exaggerate. People talk reckless. So this next part has to be framed the right way. According to what this woman reported to detectives, Gilbert told her something insane, something that suggests Angelo wasn't the one who ended Jose's life. He allegedly said their mom and Angelo went to confront Jose, and that the blame got put on Angelo, while the mom stayed quiet. And the most chilling line in that reported exchange? The crazy part is, "My little brother ain't telling on my mom." That sentence is the heartbeat of the whole case, because if it's true, then everything you thought you understood is backwards. The son isn't the mastermind. He's the shield. And the mother? The mother is the one the shield is protecting. Detectives can't arrest her based on a reported Facebook convo alone, but it gives them something they didn't have before: a new direction, a new target, and a reason to start listening to the one place families get careless: jail calls. The Facebook lead is messy by nature, which is why detectives treat it like a spark, not a fire. They ask the woman for screenshots, dates, and context. They want to know who started the conversation, what was said first, and whether the account actually belongs to Gilbert. Online, people exaggerate to look tough, so investigators look for specific details that a random storyteller wouldn't know. If those details match evidence already collected, the message becomes more than gossip. It becomes a direction. They also consider motive. Why would a stranger call police at all? Sometimes it's conscience, sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's fear that the wrong person is paying for the crime. Whatever her reason, the report introduces a horrifying possibility. Someone inside the family believes the mother is the real problem. Detectives don't present it as fact. They treat it as an allegation that needs corroboration. So they pivot to corroboration, phone records, visit logs, and the one place families speak more freely than they should. Because when someone is locked up, the people they call tend to reveal what they're protecting. And once investigators start listening with this new theory in mind, conversations begin sounding like coded confessions. The break arrives like a hammer. Cell tower data places Angelo's phone at the scene around the time Jose was killed. That obliterates the "I was home" narrative. It doesn't matter how emotional the family gets now. A phone at the scene at the moment of a homicide is a serious problem. Detectives get a warrant. They go back. And Angelo is arrested for murder. Now the public sees what looks like a clean ending: teen beef, planned fight, murder, arrest, justice. Except inside the investigation, something feels wrong. Because Angelo doesn't act like a kid who got caught. He acts like a kid who's waiting for instructions. He refuses to talk unless his mom is there. And that kind of loyalty, when you're facing a murder case, doesn't come from confidence. It comes from fear or conditioning. Or a family rule that's been drilled in since childhood. Don't tell, no matter what. And if you do, there are consequences. And that rule is exactly what would come roaring back later. When the case takes a turn nobody expected because a full year passes, and then a single message flips everything. Cell data isn't magic, but it's powerful when it lines up with everything else. Analysts don't just look at one ping. They look at patterns across towers and movement. They ask, does the phone leave the home area? Does it travel toward Central? Does it go quiet at the exact window of the shooting, then pop up again elsewhere? When that movement matches the alley timeline, it changes the conversation from maybe to why. Detectives build a chart: time, location, call activity, and the gaps in between. Those gaps matter. Because people often stop using their phones when they're doing something they don't want recorded. With that in hand, they don't need a dramatic raid. They need a defensible arrest. When Angelo is taken in, it's not just about cuffs. It's about separating him from the family narrative long enough for reality to sink in. There are attorneys, deadlines, and one repeating question: who are you protecting? As days pass, detectives notice something that doesn't fit the public clean ending. Angelo doesn't act like a lone actor. He acts like a kid waiting for permission to tell the truth, which suggests the real authority is still outside the cell, right now. Chavez tries to keep it short. 5 minutes. That's it. Bruciaga doesn't blink. She hits her with the stolen car issue, how the report doesn't match what Chavez claimed. Chavez insists she called it in. She waves around a confirmation number like that should end the conversation. But the detective isn't there to argue paperwork. She's there to argue intent. So why did you set up a fight between Angelo and Jose? Chavez immediately rejects the wording. No, no, no. Then starts explaining anyway. And in her explanation, the truth leaks out. She knew about the fight. She let them know. She was involved in the communication. It's not a confession to murder, but it's proof the mother isn't some clueless bystander. She's part of the chain. Bruciaga pushes harder, warning her that when charges come, she'll be charged too. Chavez storms away, and Elizabeth stays behind, still insisting her family wouldn't do it. But detectives don't need Elizabeth to believe it. They need evidence that physically places someone there. And a month later, they finally get it. The kind of evidence that makes excuses pointless. The bus line sounds ordinary, which is why it's so revealing. Ordinary is what people reach for when they want a conversation to end without looking guilty. Chavez frames herself as busy, overwhelmed, just a mom with errands, but Bruciaga keeps pulling her back to the same point. A teenager is dead, and the story keeps changing. When Chavez flashes a confirmation number, it's meant to be a shield, proof that she did the right thing, but shields can be checked. Detectives can verify when the report was filed, what details were included, and whether the timing makes sense. That's why Bruciaga doesn't argue. She lets Chavez talk, and Chavez can't help but step into the subject of the fight. She rejects the wording, then admits knowledge, then frames her involvement as responsible parenting. To a detective, that's the pivot. A person who claims total innocence usually keeps distance. A person who's entangled starts rationalizing. Rationalizing is dangerous because it creates admissions. By the time Chavez walks away, Bruciaga has what she wanted. Not proof of the trigger, but proof of participation. And participation is enough to justify the next leap. Hard location evidence that can't be explained away. No more guessing. In the account you provided, the legal endings land like a slow punch. Angelo pleads guilty to conspiracy and stays in juvenile custody until he ages out. Chavez pleads guilty to second-degree murder and gets 18 years. And beyond the murder case, Chavez also faces a separate charge related to child exploitation material found during the investigation, according to the same narrative. But here's what makes this story viral-level haunting. The most disturbing part isn't the alley. It's the family dynamic. Because this case forces a question people hate asking. When loyalty becomes a rule and silence becomes a tradition, who gets sacrificed first when the truth is too expensive? A 16-year-old is gone. A baby grows up without a father, and a family's don't tell code doesn't just protect people, it destroys them. And the next time you hear about a teen fight that was supposed to be harmless, remember this. Sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the kid throwing punches. It's the adult who steps in, thinks they can control the outcome, and turns drama into a funeral. And once that happens, the truth doesn't stay hidden forever. Not when there's a car on camera, not when phones keep receipts, and not when one message online slips through the cracks and exposes what the family tried to bury. Even after sentences are read, a case like this doesn't end cleanly. It keeps echoing in the people who were forced to grow up overnight. The friends who saw Jose at school, the co-workers who expected him to walk back into the kitchen, the baby who will someday ask why his father isn't in photos. The twist here isn't entertainment. It's tragedy shaped like a warning. A planned fight sounds small until someone brings a gun and a car becomes the getaway. A family story sounds stable until it turns into a script everyone repeats. And a kid's silence sounds noble until you realize silence can be used as a tool. What makes this story stick is the uncomfortable idea that the people closest to you can also be the ones who steer you into danger. If the adults in a home normalize revenge, the kids learn revenge as a language. If the adults normalize secrecy, the kids learn secrecy as survival. That's why the final image isn't the alley or the interrogation room or the courtroom steps. It's the moment of detail, one gold car on one camera,